Jamar Chase had a bigger game in week 6 than we've seen from him in a while. We're going to talk about how they used him and how they can continue to evolve his role in this offense.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. It is film review day with Sans at Bengals_Sans, Mike Santagata. You can find him on Twitter and on All Bengals and elsewhere. Does a lot of content about the Bengals these days. We're brought to you today by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. And of course, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your Bengals every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. So subscribe, so follow. We'll be delivered to your devices when we post our content. You'll get to listen to us first thing in the morning when you drive to work. And we appreciate everybody who does that. And like I said, we're going to dive into Jamar Chase today. We've talked about the shotgun offense the last couple of days and the evolution that we're seeing schematically from this team. That'll come up as well. We're also going to talk about the offensive line showing some signs of improvement and the defensive line, the interior defensive line, where there are question marks and questionable depth, at least heading into two very run-heavy opponents in the coming weeks. But we're going to start, Mike, with Jamar Chase. Big game, obviously. And, you know, we've talked about this. We've gone back and forth as we've both watched the film. What was it that the Bengals did that was maybe different, if anything, this week with Jamar, outside of just targets that made him go off in week 6 that we didn't see from him in the prior weeks?
Yeah, I guess the first thing I think of is what everybody wanted and all those crossing routes and whatnot. It wasn't a ton of them, but he got targeted on them, and he ran some shallow stuff he didn't get targeted on. I think of the over the middle targets in week 5 against the Ravens, that it was like a dig and it was things like that. And now they had him a little bit more sometimes on the shallow crosser, the drag, things like that get him ball and moving. And he got targeted on them more too, because that was always really the issue with all the route charts was, well, all his targets are outside there, but he's actually running that stuff sometimes. And this time he ran it a little bit more frequently, and they targeted him on those routes more often.
I have a follow-up question really quick. When you look at Jamar Chase's strengths as a receiver, a lot of people want to see him use more over the middle. I think slants, drags, he's been really good in those situations. Don't recall a ton of the Bengals running him on post, a ton of him on digs. That's more of what they asked T. Higgins to do. Is that a skill set thing? Like, he's a different kind of route runner. He doesn't have that deception in his route running. He's more of a power burst kind of guy, or what do you think that is? Do you think that's a preference, or do you think that's a skill set thing?
I think the first thing is he's a stubby 6 foot. So when you got a guy that's 6'4" with go gadget arms that can go over the middle and catch the ball high, like we saw T do this week again, you probably want to use that guy on there. I think T is also just the best, such a niche skill, but the dig route, he's just the best at it on the team, and one of the better ones in the NFL entirely, just at reading the underneath coverage, getting to the right spot, being able to turn his body over the middle of the field, still take hits and extend his long arms to make those catches. Chase, I want to see him on the move more. He's a really good yak guy. That's why I like that underneath crosser stuff, so he can catch it and run. The dig, a lot of times you end up kind of turning around and sitting down kind of stuff to catch that. Whereas on slants, on drags, and even on shallow crossers, you're catching the ball and running still. So I like when they use that, they used him on routes because they tried to dig route against the Ravens and it didn't work. And that wasn't because of Chase's skill set. The linebacker just drops into that spot. But I like him more when he's catching the ball and running on the move rather than catching it and having to sit in the voids of the coverage, because that is more of a T. Higgins thing for me.
Sans, let's stick with wide receivers, because we know how much I like to talk about wide receivers. And I can't believe Jake asked 2 questions without allowing me to ask a question about wide receivers, the most important position in sports, wide receivers. Tyler Boyd, he was actually used this week. He is on the team, for those wondering. What did they do differently with TB83? Because obviously he was a factor with his 6 catches for 66 yards.
for the first time since the Super Bowl, I think they had him on some choice routes. Choice, slop, loosey, looky. It's all the same thing. That just means it's a slant out option. And this is something that Brandon Marshall, Michael Thomas, Cooper Kupp have all killed with. You come up, you kind of shuffle the feet, and you watch the corner. If he goes inside, you're running the out. If he goes outside, you run the slant. And if you have the chance to cross face. But that's also what got him into trouble with the Super Bowl, because he tried to cross a guy's face that was way off of him and not right next to him. So he made a really nice catch on a slant off of the choice concept that he did cross the guy's face and get open. I think it was Chris Harris Jr., who I heard his name on the broadcast. I was like, oh, I didn't know he was still playing. Cool. So he catches that, and I'm not sure how good Chris Harris is, but he's still starting. He didn't look terrible or anything. So he's able to cross Chris Harris Jr.'s face, make the catch on a slant. And I just thought using him in those ways, especially against these two high shells, is really smart, because when you think of two high versus one high, both safeties are back. One high, one of those safeties gets down into that area, so it just clogs up the middle a little bit more.
What does that do for the offense when you're getting the ball to Boyd over the middle, which I feel like is something everybody's talked about? But what did that do? Because he was the first guy that kind of got things going, and then we saw Jamar and T sprinkled in throughout the game, and then obviously Jamar had the huge plays at the end.
Yeah, I think it just gets them the first downs when they need them. He's not going to be the guy that's going to, even though he's done this, twice, he's not really the guy that's going to catch the huge play and sprint down the field for like a 50-yard gain, the chunk plays, the explosives. That's not really him, but when you need a first down, and not always when you need it on third down and stuff, but let's say we want to pick up 8 yards on first down, or it's, 2nd and 7. And that's a guy you can go to in that spot to just pick up that first down, keep the chains moving, rather than getting in these third downs, third and longs that have killed the Bengals this year.
What's the next step then, Mike? James, good 2 questions in a row. Retaliation. I respect it. That's right. Well deserved. What's the next step for this Bengals offense? We've seen them start to attack these two high defenses a little bit differently. I think they got a lot of single high from the Saints, although, as I mentioned to you in our DMs, Mike, with all the matching they do, I had a hard time figuring out what some of the coverages were. It seemed like there was a lot of 3 from the Saints this week. But what do you think? Where do they go from here? They've got this increased involvement of the RPO, the increased usage of the shotgun, using Tyler Boyd a little bit more on some of these choice routes that we've been asking for a while. What would you like to see them do? Specifically, let's talk about Jamar Chase, because this is a player that I think Bengals fans are most interested in seeing, getting him the ball in space, letting him do things like Deebo Samuel and Tyreek Hill after the catch, letting him use his dynamism. Where would you like to see them go or use more of? Or are you happy with what they did in week 6?
I was happy with what they did in week 6. I thought it was one of the ways when I think about this offense and how it should be utilized, that kind of was, that's a whole game of what I would probably think that they do best, and they had a good game. But also the one area I think is really lacking from Chase, and they're able to get 1 10-yard gain or so out of it, is just the screen game with him. And they're not really a good screen team, but they got him on a flat screen. I believe it was an RPO, and they ran it again, but they handed it off the second time. But it's an Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay Packers staple, where the number 3 trips, so 3 wide receivers or a tight end, but this 3 wide receivers, and the number 3 is just running straight flat, and the other 2 guys block for him. This is actually the play against the Ravens last year that they faked the screen and threw a touchdown. Because Josh Bynes knew the call. So they changed the call to being the fake screen. But anyway, I'd like to see him run like a good tunnel or a good jailbreak screen and actually get the blocking in front of him so that he can get past the first level and be one-on-one with safeties. James, you're muted.
My bad. See, me and Jake are just on separate pages right now. Call it Joe Jamar week 5 back shoulder, right? I'm going go ball. He's throwing back shoulder. We'll get it ironed out, and we're going to switch gears, talking about the offensive line. How good were they in week 6? We'll discuss that next. But first, a word from LinkedIn Jobs, because these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you're getting the most qualified candidate available. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So check them out right now. LinkedIn Jobs, it's going to help you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. And all you have to do is go to linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, guys, let's dive into offensive line talk where there was some improvement. We've had a couple weeks of it now. The running game 2 weeks in a row is working. Some of that, I think, could be the package play stuff the Bengals are doing with their running game, and it is affecting linebackers in a pretty significant way. Another part of this is that, well, they're not running wide zone. They're not going under center and running wide zone at this point. And so, Mike, when you're looking at this offensive line, let's start with the running game. I know there wasn't much of it this week. We'll go to pass blocking as well. What were the big takeaways for you? How have things progressed for this unit? You're also muted, Mike.
It felt like a lot of the wide zone under center stuff was on life support last week, where they just kind of ran it twice, 3 times, and each one of them was bad. And then this week it was just gone. They're just like, all right, we're a gap team. We're just running from the gun. It's what works. Their gun run stuff was up around 6 yards per carry last week, and it was again this week. It was up above 5. So what they're doing, the stuff that works, and they've kind of cut out, and it is impressive. They've cut out the stuff that Frank Pollock and Zach Taylor love. The one run play that they want to base their run game off of, they've just kind of gone, I guess we got the wrong guys, or something along those lines. That, Frank's just able to dial up new scheme on the fly. This stuff was going to be in there, but it's like we weren't going to major in duo and inside zone from the gun, but I guess we'll have to. So they've done a good job of adapting to the skill sets of their offensive line. The offensive line is gelling a lot more. They're able to actually work together and not leave a free guy every single play. And I would say, to go all with that, is Mixon looks healthy. I thought weeks 2 through 4, he didn't look healthy. He just falling down whenever he got contacted, couldn't get through a hole without falling down at times. And now he's able to actually make guys miss and run through at the second level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been nice to see Joe put those questions to bed a little bit about, does he still have juice? Well, we've seen it a little bit the past couple of weeks. I want to ask you about Lyle Collins, because he's taken the most heat out of anyone on this offensive line. He got cold taked with the bodyguard comments and, the sack numbers and everything like that. But how is he playing? Because it seems like, at least to me, that he's been better in recent weeks, and those Wednesdays off might be doing that body well in helping him get to closer to 100%, at least on Sundays.
I thought last week was okay. It was nothing like to write home about. It was not a terrible performance, but he also faced off against a very older Justin Houston for most of the game and still gave up either a pressure or a sack. I can't even remember at this point, on an inside move. This week, to start, I believe the first half, if you just looked at that, this looked like the guy we were talking about all offseason when they signed him in Dallas, this top 5 right tackle. He was dominant against everybody. He dominated Cam Jordan. He dominated the I believe is his name, number 90. Everybody they were throwing at him. And 93, who was sometimes their defensive tackle, and they run duo and they need him to drive. He's able to drive that guy out of the hole in the run game. He's able to throw Cam Jordan onto his face in pass protection. He got a couple snatch traps in. He had one thing turned to like a hockey scrum, and number 90 had his arms flailing around. That was one of my favorite clips. But just in the first half, he looked dominant. Like, this is who they signed. This is the steal signing they had. Then it wasn't as good in the second half, but it wasn't terrible. It wasn't even as bad as like weeks 1 through 4. It was kind of a little bit like week 5. And also, I would say he's not hitting the ground as often. It still happened a few times, and probably still is probably the most common offensive lineman to hit the ground if one's going to do it. But against Baltimore, even, he was still falling down on like 70% of these plays towards the end. And this time, it's the first time I think like the back might be getting better, because what I think of when that happens, it's either he can't move enough to push that guy, so he dives, or it just locks up as he's trying and it just kind of gives out. And this time I didn't see any of like the locking up and giving out thing. He dove a couple times, and I just don't know if he's moving as well as he did in Dallas. It might still be at like 90% of what he was able to do. So he's diving on those, and he doesn't realize his more limited athleticism now. But just a long way to say it looks like Collins might be back, at least in the first half, first 3 quarters even. I would say he looked good. Not just good for what he's done this year, but legitimately a good right tackle. And the guy next to him has been playing awesome.
Yeah, let's talk about Alex Kappa as well, and it could continue. That's one thing I wanted to point out for Collins in particular. It's not like, at least for 1 week until the Cleveland defensive end duo comes or plays against Cincinnati on Monday Night Football on Halloween, Atlanta doesn't necessarily threaten you in severe ways on the edge. Arnold Ebiketie, the rookie out of Penn State, has been okay for them. He I think just had his best game. The interior, though, Grady Jarrett is by far the best player on this Atlanta defense. As we look forward to next week a little bit and thinking about the way the interior offensive line is played, how's that going with the other new guys, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Cordell Volson, to round out the 4 new offensive linemen in 2022?
Yeah, I think Cordell Volson's been a little bit of the weak link at times. He is a guy that people are able to successfully attack a little bit. Ted Karras has been solid. He's kind of just been solid the entire year. I can't think of too many games where he was bad outright, but I can't think of too many outstanding games either. But Alex Kappa this week was outstanding to me. He had, I think, like 2 missed blocks out of the entire game. That's really good. Don't remember any pressures from him. Don't recall too much wrong. So when that happens, that's already got you on a good level. And then he's doing these really nice pickups on the linebackers, because the Saints love to play aggressively and tell their linebackers, if you see a hole open up, fire through it and get the ball. And Pete Werner tried to do that, I think 2, 3, 4 times. And each time Kappa picked him up and pushed him into the pile, picks him up, pushed him into the pile. And then Collins right next to him is able to drive his guy out of the hole. And it just did such a nice job in the run game. I do think Grady Jarrett is a problem, because he looks like he's healthy and playing better than he has in the past couple of years. Just from cursory glances and from statistics, I haven't deep dived him just yet. But when he was at his best, he was always a guy that was almost like 90-85% of Geno Atkins. So if you think of that, Hall of Fame level of Geno Atkins, and then you've got 90% of that, that's an all-pro player, at least to me. So I thought Grady Jarrett was always playing around an all-pro level at his peak. He looks like he's getting near that for him at least, and that is an issue for more to me, Volson, because if I'm Atlanta and I'm Dean Pease, their defensive coordinator, I'm scheming up ways to get him one-on-one with a rookie. Whether or not that rookie is even playing well, I want to test that early, especially on 3rd and long.
Jonah obviously had to play through that knee injury and has done a good job, I think, being able to just tolerate the pain that comes with it and play through it at the second half of the Baltimore game, and then obviously on Sunday against the Saints as well. Zach Taylor said no setbacks or anything like that. They're not worse for wear for playing him, which is a good sign. What did he show you? Good, bad, ugly?
It was sad that he got injured, because I thought he had his best game against Baltimore. And then it was more back to prior weeks where there's good in there, but there's also, it felt a little bit to me like his anchor wasn't able to drop down as quickly. I don't know if that's related to the knee and the pain that comes with trying to stop a 300-pound man from pushing through you. But also at times didn't look, I don't remember if it was his left or right knee, but I know there's specifically a play that went to the inside, and it looked like he wasn't able to power off of his left leg to wall the guy off inside like that. So a few times it showed up. He didn't have his best game. Don't think he was terrible, and he's better than any of the backups probably would have been. So commendable for him to get out there and play, and he's playing at a higher level than the backups would be able to, but it was no longer at the I would write home about this type stuff that he did against Baltimore.
We'll have to see that continue to improve. Hopefully that knee gets healthier. Hopefully Collins' back continues to get healthier. Like I said, not an incredibly steep level of competition off the edge for Atlanta, and a defense, honestly, that has been prone to error and giving up a lot of offense. But their running game, on the other hand, without Cordero Patterson, even just with Marcus Mariota and Tyler Algier, rookie, is going pretty well in that offense. We're going to talk about the interior of the Bengals defensive line, as they're going to have a lot to deal with the next 2 weeks to finish up the show coming up next.
BetOnline is your number one source for all things football betting this season, whether it's the NFL, whether it's college football. If you want the latest odds, props, if you want to maybe wager on the Bengals to win the AFC North, tied for first place again, 3-3. Are they about to make the run? Well, you could cash in now by getting the odds now when things are up in the air at BetOnline. And it's not just NFL, like I said, with the NBA kicking off with I guess I should say tipping off, with the NBA tipping off, or the Major League Baseball playoffs in full swing. You can wager on anything from that to MMA, boxing, and golf. So go to BetOnline right now. Sign up for free today, or use your mobile device, by the way. It doesn't have to just be your laptop or PC. So check out BetOnline. I've used them. You should too. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, guys, let's shift gears. Let's talk defense. We haven't done this for more than a couple minutes for a while now. We've been very focused on this offense. We've talked a lot about the offense on the show this week, though. So if you want more on the offense, just go back, check out yesterday's episode. We spent pretty much the entire episode there. Interior defensive line for the Bengals right now, for guys on the roster, for base downs, because they're playing Joseph Osai at 3-tech in pass rushing situations. And he had a really nice play there, by the way, in week 6. But the base down stuff, the run D, guys, that's what I'm talking about today. And that's BJ Hill, who they extended and is a starter from the start of the year. Zach Carter, who's been playing a lot, especially for a third-round rookie. I think that it's largely because they lost DJ Reader. He's had to play more. And now it's J. Tufele. Josh Dupo got hurt, of course. DJ Reader at least one more week away from his return, if not longer, and no timetable committed to from Zach Taylor there. How were the Saints so good in the running game against the Bengals, Mike? This is a unit that had been previously, well, really prior to week 5 anyway, pretty good against the run this year.
I think it starts with they had 2 explosive plays given up, one to Taysom Hill and one to Shaheen, I believe was his name. Practice squad guy. Took a jet sweep. Yep. Yeah, took a jet sweep like 60 yards and made Von Bell and all these people fall down. So I don't know. I think that's some of it. But also Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram had good games. So that doesn't take away the entirety of it. And I thought that they were a little bit dominated in the trenches at times. I could find at least one play for each BJ Hill, Josh Dupo, or Zach Carter where they just got washed 5+ yards down the field. And you just can't overcome that when you're the other players on that defensive front. At times, they were able to wash those guys back into the linebackers. And then that's when I believe Adam Ochoa was talking about Jermaine Pratt's getting driven like 5, 6, 7 yards downfield. Well, the Bengals slow play and they like to sit there and wait. And then it ends up, well, the defensive tackles push back into your lap and you're already 4 yards downfield. And then he drives you another 3 yards. Yeah, it's 7 yards downfield before the running back's even contacted. So I didn't think the linebackers did a great job. And this is all just, to me, a domino effect from the DJ Reader injury a little bit. We saw the cracks against Baltimore, but this is where it kind of floodgate open moment at times. But it got better. And I want to say Sam Hubbard still did a great job in run defense. He's just always going to be a great run defender. And then to go with that, I thought J. Tufele played good. I thought he was the best interior defensive lineman. And that is not too it's a little bit of indictment on the interior defensive line from Sunday's performance, but it's also J. Tufele played well. There were a lot of plays that I went, ooh, he flashed there, or yeah, he didn't even get washed on that double team. It's the double teams that are killing these guys. None of them can hold up against those double teams except Reader, and then Tufele came in. He was able to hold up on a combo, and it was noteworthy because nobody else did that so far.
So do you think it's sustainable with these guys, given that I don't know if Reader's going to come back for Cleveland, but I think he's getting closer. So it's not, I don't expect him to be out another 4 weeks either. Do you think they should go add someone? Do you think Tyler Shelvin should just get the nod? How do you think they approach it here? Because you're right. They like J. Tufele a lot. Obviously BJ Hill got the big contract. And then they can mix guys in like Osai. Maybe they promote someone else from the practice squad and give him some interior reps. What's his name? The 5th rounder from Notre Dame, Khalid Kareem. You could do that too. What do you think? What route do you think they go?
Yeah, if they're doing that stuff, they could also possibly toss Cam Sample in there on some downs. He's done it before.
Yep.
So they could just Band-Aid it all together and try to last one more week, however long it'll be. But I don't know who's out there, and not Sue. Let's not talk about like these big name type guys because I don't think they're signing them. After DJ Reader went down, they didn't sign anybody. They just promoted Tufele. So I'm not sure they're going after a name like that. But if there is a guy out there that they liked or something, I'm not opposed to them bringing in more depth because I don't want these guys playing too much and getting hurt themselves. Whether or not they think Tyler Shelvin can do that, I don't know. Can Tyler Shelvin play more than what's the most snaps he's ever played? Like a dozen? He's a huge guy. And I'm not sure his stamina when he's not, playing in all the games. And also questions about whether he can hold up on those doubles because he wasn't able to last year. So if it was me, I'd probably try to bring one guy in maybe and just have a bigger group. But I also get the idea that you're getting the cavalry is on the way. You guys just need to man the fort. Really, the best run defense that they'll be able to do against Atlanta is to go up 14 in the first quarter and just try to force Mariota to throw the ball.
Just real quick, Shelvin has 58 career snaps on defense and 4 career games.
So that's like an average of more than 12, Mike. Come on.
But in Mike's defense, 49 of those were last year in 3 games. So really not many snaps this year. 1 game, 9 snaps.
Oh yeah. I'm just giving him a hard time. Look, I don't personally have a whole lot of faith that Tyler Shelvin's the answer. If he is, that's fantastic. That's great. That means you have a chief resource to plug in there. You don't have to go spend your salary cap that you have very little of. You don't have to get creative with restructures. That just makes the Bengals' life easier. Sam Hubbard, though, Mike, while we're on the topic of the defensive line, and let's hit on Logan Wilson as well. Sam Hubbard continues to play at an elite level this year. They lose Logan Wilson, though. What do you think happens with Akeem Davis-Gaither coming back? I thought he played reasonably well, but also was on the field for, according to PFF, 0 run defense snaps against the Saints. So losing Logan Wilson late in that game, didn't get to see what they would do to necessarily replace him in those run looks. Can Sam Hubbard cover some of this stuff up any more than he did last week? And Akeem Davis-Gaither looking at a return to the starting lineup, how do those project for you?
I thought Akeem Davis-Gaither's run defense was surprisingly good against the Dolphins. If I'm going to go back and think about this year, he just scares me as a 215, 20-pound guy trying to set edges and taking on linemen, because I just think if I was a coach, I would go, yeah, let's run at that guy. Let's run at the small one. But he did a really good job. So, lure them into the trap. I think if it's the Bengals and it's the Bengals that we saw last year, they're just a next man up at linebacker. They're not bringing anybody onto this team. Pratt plays well. He does what they want for the most part. And when Wilson was out last year, Pratt played well. And then whether it was Davis-Gaither, I don't believe he played at all on that starting lineup. So whether it was Batchy, it was Bailey, either one of those guys during the regular season when Wilson was out, they stepped up and they played well. So I think what they really like their linebacker depth. I've often thought that at least this year, they've kind of got like the unit to play a 4-3, even if that's not what they believe in. And on base downs, go with 3 linebackers because the interior is also a little bit shallow, but those linebackers are just so deep that I think they'll be able to get away with a Wilson injury for a while. You hope it's not too long, but anybody that's tweeting God's plan probably isn't coming back soon. So I think they'll be able to get away with it. You just hope that Wilson's back sooner rather than later. Yeah,
it would be rough if it's longer, and we'll know more on Wednesday. And Zach Taylor said that they're hopeful it's week to week, so we'll see there. But real quick, Sam Hubbard, and Jake asked about him. Obviously, he's flashed. It seems like he's making a play or two every week that sticks with you, or at least sticks with me. Is there anything different about him this year than last year or previous years when you watch the film? Is he just flashing more? Is it just me, or is he standing out and popping off a little bit more than normal?
I think he is popping off a little bit more than normal. I don't know if it's the Built Bar diet or what,
It's got to
but
be. I mean,
he's
come on.
just getting a few extra plays per game, it seems, a few extra flash plays, especially pass rushing. It feels like he's getting these good bull rushes in there. He put Greg Little on his back. Anytime you can do that to a professional athlete, that's impressive. Just got to come away with the sack and don't let Teddy throw you off. Maybe he needs 2 Built Bars before the play next time. But yeah, he's been really strong. He's flashed more than he has in the past. I almost want to say more than normal, but he's having his career year, and he's still a very, very good run defender, and he's now starting to add on good pass rushing to it. Even a few times against the Saints, who have a top 3-4 right tackle in Ryan Ramczyk, he was able to bull rush him back and not get the sack or not force Dalton off his spot, but stop him from being able to get away from somebody on the other side. So I just really like what Sam Hubbard's been able to do this year. Jake said elite, and I was like, whew, that is high praise.
I think Trey Hendrickson's. Yeah, I think Trey Hendricks. They are at the hip, guys. Like wherever Trey goes, Sam goes. They eat together from what I see. They walk out to practice together. They stretch together, and so Trey Hendrickson's a great edge rusher. You know, you're telling me that it can't help a little bit or give you that little bit of, you know, a pointer here, pointer there, where it makes all the difference. So, yeah, I think that certainly helped, even if it's a little bit, having someone like that to play around and play next to.
A couple guys we're not going to get to talk about today, not talk to. Well, we also won't talk to them, that I just want to shout out really quick for a couple nice performances. I mentioned Joseph Osai's name a little bit earlier. He continues to be a 3-tech pass rusher for the most part for this team. Had another nice little game as a 3-tech pass rusher. He had 14 pass rushing snaps against the Saints. And Chidobe Awuzie, against some backups of wide receiver, you would expect him to be very good. And he was very good. He was targeted 4 times in this game, according to PFF, gave up just 1 catch for 7 yards and had that beautiful pass breakup on one of the deep targets that was just very well played. And so shout out to Chidobe Awuzie for yet another. He had 2 pass breakups in this game. I'm only remembering one of them right now. Yet another really strong performance for a guy that continues to be underrated by those that don't closely watch the Bengals in the AFC North. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We're back tomorrow with Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. We'll get a feel for what's going so wrong for that Falcons defense and how they're going to continue to run the ball or not. And Drake London, Kyle Pitts, will those guys be factors in the game, or is it really going to be that running game, even without Cordero Patterson? So that'll be coming your way tomorrow here, in addition to some predictions. And that's our crossover show before our game preview coming up later this week. Until then, Bengals fans, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.